The detectives pulled up my naked photos on their laptop and, remaining fully respectful and professional, interrogated me on the details of when, where, and with whom each graphic picture had been taken. "Who is this here?" one detective asked, pointing to an image of me giving a blowjob. My face was fully exposed, while the penis disappeared out of the frame to protect the anonymity of its owner. "That's my husband," I answered firmly, knowing that the photo had been taken without my knowledge and posted without my consent on dozens of porn sites for more than a decade. I am a survivor of sexual abuse and revenge porn. Through 15 exhausting years with a sexual predator, I felt so solitary and trapped. When I began talking to other women, I realized that my situation was not as rare as I had thought. I felt less alone, less swindled, and I am speaking for other women who need to know that too. My mission requires me to be brutally, embarrassingly honest. He advertised me on Craigslist and hookup sites like I was a four-door sedan decked out with a luxury interior and a sunroof. Each time I relied on alcohol to loosen up, just as I had done as a teenager. On one rendezvous, I became so drunk beforehand that I don't even remember the experience, although there are certainly plenty of pictures online to prove that it happened. I was far too inebriated for consent, but my state of mind didn't matter to either man in that hotel room, especially not the one taking pictures. Friends, that is an excerpt from a piece that today's guest has written about her own story. I spent a long time trying to figure out exactly how to introduce this guest, and I simply couldn't. This woman's story breaks my heart into a million pieces, but I got goosebumps and wanted to cry tears of literal joy thinking about how much this woman has gone through and how she's made it on the other side of everything. Her name is M, and she is today's guest. And that little piece that I just read is from a longer piece of her story that I will link in the description below that I highly recommend that you go and read before listening to this episode. It is a detailed, artistic, and beautifully written piece. M was in an abusive relationship for 15 years. It was a marriage. She had a child with this man. And not only did he abuse her, but he ultimately ended up sex trafficking her and selling and posting her nude photos all over the internet on hundreds of sites and chat rooms without her consent or knowledge. To this day, her photos are still on the internet and he has not been punished at all. So with all of that being said, I would like to welcome M to the What They Don't Say podcast. Well, hi, Em. Thank you so much for being with us today. Could you give our audience a brief background of your story and who you are? We had originally found you because you had reached out about, an article that you had written that's kind of like the first portion of your story, which we'll link in the bio of this episode, but it's called Coercive Kinks: How My Ex Trafficked Me and How I Survived. Could you do your best to kind of give a brief background for our audience?
First, a little about me. I am a consciously single mother. I'm a creative professional, graphic designer, and recovering alcoholic. And that kind of ties into my story also. That's sort of an important factor. It's a big part of my identity now that I'm recovering. But my story is really within my marriage. The assault that I experienced, like many women, I've experienced multiple assaults throughout my life, not just from this one person, but it definitely led me into a relationship like that. And essentially, my ex-husband, I met him young and had our first child really young, and our first and only child. There was a lot of domestic violence and rage, just a lot of control initially, especially after I had our child. And then that slowly turned into sexual abuse. And there's a lot of different layers to the story, obviously. And when I say, the story being about being trafficked, that is part and parcel of what later happened with my photos being shared online and what they call revenge porn. So, if I can briefly sum up my story, let me see if I can do it briefly. Between the domestic violence, anger, rage at home, it fueled a lot of the coercion into the sexual abuse in our marriage. And I'd say it started with him wanting to take photos of me or me sending him photos. This was before smartphones, before, I was still on a flip phone sending these photos.
Right.
And, at the time, it just didn't seem, there was no knowledge around it. We still didn't have, the internet was still pretty new to our, being in our pocket. And then I found out that he was taking those photos and sharing them on chat rooms. And for a moment, I left. Our son was just a baby, and of course, I went back, like many women
Right.
do. And that sort of, now that I look back on it, I realize I think he probably realized I was trapped and I wasn't going to leave, so he could push it a little further. So slowly he started sharing with me that he wanted me to indulge his secret fetish he had never told me, kind of with
Right.
this illusion of shame, like he was telling me something really big. And it was just really, really manipulative. The fetish was cuckolding, which is basically where typically the man in a relationship wants to see his female partner have intimate interactions with other men. And no shade to cuckolding,
Right.
everybody has the right to their their kinks and everything, but interesting how some of these kinks and fetishes, the power dynamics can really make it a breeding ground for abuse. So from there, it kind of just exploded. It came, I said, no, absolutely not. And then it sort of became baked into our relationship where he would get angry at me, and that would be the reason for being angry, is that I was
Right.
not pleasing him or getting him what he wanted. So eventually I gave in, and it started with meeting men in hotel rooms to do things. He would go just to watch and record video, photos of all of it. Um, and in doing that, my only way of coping with it was to drink a lot to get
Right.
through it. So that definitely fueled my issues with that. So long story short, that happened through our marriage, and then finally I left him in about 2019, right before COVID, thank
Oh
God.
my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, good timing. Not long after I separated from him, after kind of putting up my boundaries with him, after some things happened and really putting my foot down with him, I found out that I was informed by somebody that he was taking the photos from our marriage that he had taken not only during these meetings, but like during photo shoots. That was a big part of it, having me pose and sending pictures to people selling photos, that kind of stuff. He was using those photos online, spreading them on social media. I mean, more
Ugh.
than I can even imagine. I realize now that those photos, they're never going to be taken down. There's no going back. It's out there, and that's okay. I did go to the police eventually, and nothing came of it, unfortunately. But
Just
here
so
we
fucked
are.
up.
This is why I'm talking about it, because it's frustrating,
Mhm.
because the laws just don't protect us, and it's so nuanced. And because the photos existed in a way that was so coercive and it looked like it was consensual, and technically I had consent at the time, even though it wasn't, it was really hard legally to find any foundation or ground to go forward. But to sum it up, now I'm, like I said, recovering from my alcoholism.
Yay.
My child and I are living in Portland. We're loving life. I'm moving forward with my career, and thankfully, we have no contact with him through the courts. That system actually did protect us, thankfully, and
Yeah.
so things are going better now.
Wow. That like the first thing I think about is you're talking about the fact that you couldn't find like legal basis for
Hmm.
like having any sort of repercussions against him and just consequences for him. And it's like, yeah, I guess from like a technological standpoint, like technology like this that like allows for this has only really been out for what, 25
Yeah, this was
ish
15
years?
years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
15, 10, no, almost 12 even, in some of the cases. And so it slowly evolved with what
Mhm.
happened, and it became like, along with the escalation of the abuse, so did the opportunities to send stuff
Yeah, it was
online and
just
utilize
enabling
the
it
internet.
and
Yeah,
making it
yeah,
easier to, like, do that and, like, get away with that and stuff like that, and, like, I
right.
just you think, "Oh, like, 25 years, there should be laws in place now." But then you think about how hard it is to just get good sexual assault laws in
Oh,
general,
yeah.
and it's been such a fight for decades and decades and decades and decades. And like
Hmm.
now we are finally starting to see some glimmers of hope on like some state levels throughout the country, but like that
Hmm.
has been the biggest fight to get. And so now you're having
this thing which like has only existed for 25 years. And so a lot of people don't even know about it. They like
Right.
don't know how big of an issue it is, and like it's kind of, underground for a reason, obviously. And
Mm-hmm.
just think about like how hard it is going to be to like even convince people that this is like a real problem, but then
Oh yeah.
be able to do it at a level where legal change is going to be made, and like there's going to be legislation changes made, and like that is just kind of crazy to think about. But like you said, this is why we're having this conversation, right? It's
Hmm.
like we need to raise awareness that this is a thing, that this is happening, that this is a huge problem, and start those conversations, or
Right.
change is never going to be made.
Exactly. And that's another thing I've noticed. In writing my story, I actually talked to a friend of a friend who had gone through something similar. It was different, but very similar. And the way we kind of broke down the way they used just their tactics, the way they
Mhm.
told us and, either complimented us and made us feel so beautiful and special, and then boom, angry with us, or they want to see these horrible perverse things, us doing these things that we didn't want to do, but it was like a need. It's like we
Mhm.
have to, it's an obsession. It really came down to pleasing, the
Mhm.
pleasing your man type of thing. And I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's getting outdated too, but I
Right.
Oh
I
yeah.
know a lot of women myself that I suspect are going through some things in their marriage that, obviously you're so ashamed, you feel like a failure. It's so unfair to women to have to carry that, but I see it, and that's why I'm like, you know what? I need to just talk about this because there's not enough around, especially revenge porn. I have
Mhm.
an issue with that name, let alone the crime itself. But there's just not enough out there, and I feel like it's a big component in domestic violence. I don't know if you guys know the case going on right now of Micah Miller out of
I'm
North
not
Carolina,
familiar.
I believe.
Mm-mm.
She was just found dead, supposedly by suicide, but lots of is coming out. She had gone to a lawyer for a divorce beforehand, before her death, and things are coming out where people are thinking that it was more to it. The husband might have been involved, and the husband was a pastor of a church, kind of that power dynamic. And
Gosh.
Mhm.
more is coming out in her story from things she left behind as far as to her lawyer, and things along the lines of, he was doing similar things to her. He was having her do intimate acts with other men, strangers that he would find online, very similar to me. He posted a nude photo of her online before her death. And, just those little things that
The
all go in with
signs.
domestic violence. I
Yeah.
really feel like it's all tied together. So I don't think
Mhm.
any of this is unique to me. I don't think my story is necessarily unique. I just don't think it's talked about.
People are so uncomfortable talking about sex in general, right?
Hmm.
Let alone like sexual assault. And this is like a whole another level, especially because it's kind of new to people and they have never really heard of it. And so, like, yeah,
Hmm.
like people just get so uncomfortable, like hearing about this stuff or like hearing their friends talk about it. But it's like, no, like we have to talk about it. Like
Right.
we can't just
Right.
go through life living in this like ignorant bliss. Like it's just like crazy to me. But I also think about it from like a very kind of like the lowest level. Growing up in high school, there are like literally like 15-year-old boys who are like, oh my God, like send me nude photos, or like I'm not gonna
Yeah.
like you, or like things like that. And it's like you are 15 years old and like you're growing up, you don't know what's like right or wrong, like you have no idea what's going on. And you're like, oh my God, I just really like this boy, like he's so cute or whatever. And like maybe it's like not a big deal, like maybe I should just do it. And it's like even from that low level at such a young age, you see that manipulation as a young girl experiencing that, growing up with that, once you get to college and like after college, like you have to unravel all of those ideas that were planted in your mind growing up and like escape that and like figure that out. And that can just be so difficult to do because it's been so like, I feel like it's just been like punched into us
Yeah.
constantly throughout our lives.
And especially in your scenario, you're married to someone, in a perfect world, marriage is forever. And so this
Hmm.
has to become your new normal. Your new normal is pleasing your husband
Hmm.
through these horrific, photos and acts that he's forcing you to do because that's what's going to make him happy. And there's
Hmm.
no escape from that. So you can't even begin to unravel and go down the rabbit hole of this isn't okay because this
Yeah.
is your life. That was your life. There was no option.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the dangerous part of what happened. And now that I look back and realize, any any sexual fetish, kink, whatever you have, really it comes down to if you're in a relationship and that's brought in and demanded later in a relationship, whoa, not
Yeah.
okay. Right there. But that's where it was so confusing. And when we are raised to believe that it is our duty to please these men and everything, and especially growing up seeing that with your own parents and people around you, it's just so ingrained. So yeah, it's really hard to get out of it and take a step out and understand everything. I've really only been able to do that in the last year, I would say,
Mhm.
probably throughout
Right.
my recovery, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And that's another scary part of it too, is that even in leaving, the abuse isn't over, so there's a lot of time and steps that go into deconstructing all of it.
Right.
But I think when you're ready to, most women who know, when you're ready, it's there's no going back.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, for people who are listening to this and you want to be able to like dive more into M's story, like Shannon said, she did write this amazing, amazing piece
With
that,
illustrations.
yeah, with illustrations. Like when I read that, I could not stop. And it's, like it is a tough thing to digest, like what you're writing about.
Mhm.
It's dark, it's painful, but your writing is so amazing and so beautiful. Like you are so
Thank
talented.
you.
I literally could not stop reading. And I'm normally the type of person where like I'm terrible at like reading things through. And that's such a generational problem. But
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
could not put it down. I could not stop reading. It was so amazing. But like
Thank
one of the
you.
things that really stuck with me is that you mentioned that the most dangerous thing in the world is a rejected man. You can't like that's so accurate. And can you just describe a little bit more of like what that meant for you?
It's just so simple, it's not really that profound because it's like when we span out and look at the scope of the way the world is and more you hear in the news, women are really most vulnerable when they have said no and
Mhm.
have decided to, disengage or whatever. And whether that's in a relationship or just meeting at a bar, like men will harass us, they will murder us, they will hurt us, assault us, they start wars over us and rejection. I mean, it's the fabric of society. And I think we don't look at that as women understanding that that's in a way that's kind of our power is that we have that right to say no, but that's how they use their power onto us. And that's terrifying. And until that changes, we can't really be free or equal. There's just no way. And, as far as looking at understanding the rejection side of it within my story, I look at when I left him, he was very like a lot of women who describe the same thing, he was blindsided, shocked, couldn't believe it, even though, I'd been dealing with his abuse and his bullshit for
Blindsided.
yeah, yeah, shocked. And,
My wife,
sorry, go ahead.
my wife left me. How horrible, like really milking
Oh,
that
yeah.
aspect. Like
Oh, yeah.
woman that I've
Oh, yeah,
abused
and
for years. I cannot believe she's finally, having a right to choose what she's doing next.
right, right, exactly. And, I will also say, throwing a kid into that is even more tumultuous and
Mhm.
dangerous. But the fact is, after leaving, that's really when abuse can ramp up and get worse. And in my experience, that's what happened. As soon as I put my boundaries down, told him, kind of was in the process of trying to figure out if he was even a safe person for to be a parent. I mean, it was really getting to that point and trying to take the blinders off of what I'd been, blaming myself for so long. It was really hard. And as soon as that happened, that's when he started this photo sharing online and on social
Mhm.
media. And so it was directly correlated to my rejecting him. I mean, in my belief, that's what I believe. And right there, it just shows you that they will find a way to take your power from you, find a way to take your boundaries and your self-respect and hurt you for it. I mean, these types of people, predators, whatever you want to call them, men, I guess, they have a lot of tools to get away with stuff like this. Laws are still not up to date. It's really
Mhm.
hard to prosecute. And so the world is in their favor, but that's why we need to talk about it because we just have to, unfortunately, yes, we have to teach our boys better, but I also want to help women understand and protect themselves. Unfortunately, it's just like what were you wearing when you were assaulted? It's ridiculous we have to do this with our images, but at a certain point, we just have to be safe and I don't know, try to find a way to mitigate it because men probably aren't going to change. We're going to be the ones that have to.
Earlier on in this episode, you kind of talked about how you gave permission for your husband to have these nude photos of you, but now looking back, you're like, oh, that was 100% like not consensual. That was coercion. And a
Hmm.
lot of people might be like confused, like what does that really mean? And
Yeah.
so can you kind of just talk through what that meant for you and like kind of realizing, like looking back, like, oh shit, that actually was manipulative and that was totally coercive. Like, can you just kind of talk
Mhm.
through that a little bit?
Yeah. For so long, I blamed myself. For so long, I didn't even think what happened in our marriage was what it was because
Mhm.
I technically consented. What was I consenting under, though? Fear of violence, protecting my kid, fear of retaliation. At a certain point, the photos that was taking would be threatened as blackmail, sent to family, friends, that kind of stuff. It's a powerful tool to have those sort of images of a person. And, if you can't trust them, that's a breeding ground for what that kind of thing to happen. And so it was confusing, but now I can see it clearer and understand that I didn't want it and I didn't ask for it. I didn't enjoy it, none of it. And the photos were a big part of that. And so the hard thing that I was trying to kind of unravel was that it started with sharing my photos without my knowledge. And the photos were taken with my knowledge. But again, this was before I knew what were going to be done with them. And
Mhm.
then slowly, as everything kind of started unraveling and he wanted more and more, the photos became almost like I feel like he was marketing me. Like he
Yeah.
was
Mm.
trying to advertise me. That's kind of how it started. He advertised me on Craigslist looking for a man to have our first meetup, and he didn't tell me about it. He just advertised me and then showed me later. So this is a big part of it is that the photos were taken, and whether or not I knew he was going to do anything, he would do it anyway, and I would just catch him. And so
Mhm.
it came to the point of like, I can consent to do this or I can protest it, but it's safer if I just consent
Let
and
it.
say, okay, fine. And a lot of it, there was a certain point, and this is where it gets really cloudy with legal action. There was a point where he had said, hey, I want to share your photos. It was very, very small. He knew to slowly introduce me to these things that he wanted to do, just sort of protect his own power dynamic and what he wanted
Mm.
to, his motives.
Ugh.
And he started saying like, hey, I want to just share these in chat rooms and just niche little websites with other people who are in the cuckold community, that kind of stuff. And, obviously I protested that, but it would happen anyway. And that became him starting a Tumblr with all of our pictures, or my pictures, excuse me, my pictures. His
Yours.
face isn't
Yeah.
in any of them. Yes,
Yeah.
his face, nothing. My face showing in every single one in very graphic photos. And that includes, having intimate actions with other people, strangers,
Mhm.
while
Yeah.
I'm completely blackout drunk. There's photos I didn't even know were being taken. Things where maybe I was blindfolded or tied up. Things in the privacy of
Right.
our bedroom that we were doing as a couple. I didn't even know he was taking these photos and then sharing them. So it was so confusing to to look and see like technically I consented and that's the story I was telling myself for so long and why I
Right.
blamed myself for so long. And now I realize, like, oh my God, it was all, he was actually very, very smart in how he set up the, to get what he wanted.
Right.
It was
Mhm.
very, very clever in the way he did it. And because I wasn't sure in myself and didn't have resources and,
Hmm.
you know, he knew I wouldn't tell anybody. He
Right.
knew I
He
was
knew
ashamed of
that.
it.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because that's how these
And
people work.
yeah,
Is
yeah. And, I even think about that later on when finally, in the past year or two, when everything came out and I told people what had happened in my story, I had found out later on that he had said something along the lines to somebody that had talked to him about it that, oh, well, if you guys think that I was controlling it, didn't you see all the times that she would chat with these guys? Like he was trying to argue that I was into it also, when he was confronted with it finally. And he was saying that, see, she was trying to chat with these guys and all this stuff. And I remember at the time him wanting me to chat with these men online. And I was always thought that was weird. Like, does he get off to this? And now I realize he was doing that so that later on, if it ever came to it, he would have like proof. Oh, she
Evidence.
was engaging in it too. It's like, how did I fall for that? There's a lot of that feeling, but I definitely have compassion for myself and give
Good.
myself that healing. And I look back at myself at that age and I just want to hug her and
Oh.
take care of her. And that's what I'm trying to do now.
Yeah, I think that, like, one, that's amazing, right? It's amazing that you are
Hmm.
in a place where you do have a compassion for yourself. And I think that can be really hard for survivors to get to that point. Like, it can be really difficult. Like, me and Shannon just had a conversation about this like last week. As like a society, it's like, or especially if you like go into a courtroom and they ask you, okay, well, did you say no? And you're like, well, I didn't say no because if I said no, he was going to beat me or kill me or like take away our child or like do something
Uh-huh.
so abusive and so horrendous and traumatic. But it's like, we never talk about that. It's like, oh, well, did you say
Right.
no? Oh, you didn't say no.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then it was
Hmm.
consensual, moving on. And it's like, that's not how it
There's
works. Like,
no question.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, look at this whole timeline of how this man was manipulating me and abusing me. Like, it it should not come down to if did I just say no? Because now we know like that's not enough. That's like not gonna do it. Like it is there's so much more to unpack there. But I feel like people just stop there. They're like, oh, well, then it was consensual and you wanted to do that and like you were participating. So much what happened in your case was you
Hmm.
were trying to protect yourself and you know that if you just quote unquote consented to it, that it would protect you from any like further violence or like, him
Yes.
trying to like hurt you in any way or like hurt your child or whatever. And so like
Right.
you were doing it because you weren't only just thinking about yourself. You were also like thinking about
Right.
your kid, but you're also thinking about like how can I get out of this alive?
Yeah, exactly. And that's another point I want to make. When I brought up Micah Miller, that was a point I wanted to
Yeah.
make because the story's not only horrendous, this poor woman, I think a lot of domestic violence and sexual abuse survivors see themselves in her because they understand what it's like to be pushed to the point of wanting to die. And still her death is ruled as a suicide right now, but whether or not it was forced on her or she did it herself, I've been there. I was
Right.
suicidal for a very long
Yeah.
time because you feel like you can't escape. There's nobody, you're going to hold this forever and you're blaming yourself for it. But the point of that is with this whole case, they're trying to push a bill or how
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm the same way.
Whatever
You're
that
good.
whatever they're trying her lawyer and some people are trying to push this new thing called Micah's Law, which is specifically about coercive abuse. And
Mm,
that's when I'm like what I'm looking at going, that's the problem. It's the coercion. It's the things that motivate us to do the things that they want us to do. It's not because we're consenting, it's not because of any of that, it's because we're scared. And usually there's a motive behind that, and that's not factored in anything. So when you're saying, yeah, did you say no? Well, no, because yeah, he was going to throw a fit and I'd have to get my child out of there or he was going to hurt me. I mean, there's just so many things that would happen. So when you're forced under
mm.
those sort of situations, I mean, it's crazy.
Well, when you were talking, what I was thinking about is like how it wasn't until I don't know the exact year. What was it like 2000 when a law was passed that like rape can exist within a marriage? Like that
Hmm.
was not that long ago when that
Yeah.
law came out. And so it's like marriage can be used as a tool to
Hmm.
get away with things and to manipulate people and get them to do things. And like that's such a terrible thing to say, right? Because marriage should be
It
something
is.
that's like really
Beautiful.
beautiful and loving, but it is also used as like a brutal tool of oppression.
I will say that in, my experience as far as what happened with my photos, when he was sharing those after I left him, we were still legally married. I hadn't gotten a divorce yet. I'm so glad I didn't because everything happened. And then I finally went to the courts when I had more of a better understanding. If I had gone right after I left him, it would have been bad. So, point is, one of the comments that I heard from one of his friends. This is all hearsay, but one thing that I had heard somebody had told him after this whole thing, because he found out I went to the police
Mm.
and he was really upset about that. Apparently, a friend had told him, like, hey, it's okay. You're still legally married. So you can do whatever you want. I mean, not
My
in
God.
necessarily those words, but you're still married. You can do,
Mm.
this isn't that big of a deal if you're sharing her pictures. And it's like right there. I had left him. I had my own bank account, my own place. I paid for my own things. We sold our marital home. It was over.
Yeah.
I did not consent at that point, but that was another big portion of trying to explain to police of no, I was not consenting. And really, it all came down to that because we were still married. And
Mm.
under that umbrella, there's still that old, outdated opinion that this stuff can happen and it's all consensual because
You're married.
I'm legally tied. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
And
Like,
can I ask if that's the reason why they weren't able to do much about the nude photos that he still has?
Yeah.
Is it because you guys were still legally married?
That's a big part of it. That's a kind of a there's a lot to it.
Okay.
But that was a big part of it. Yeah, that we were still legally married. I don't think it was necessarily like the determining factor, but it was a factor. And I
mhm.
think the biggest thing that they were trying to get to was consent. That was the theme of the whole process was
Right.
this really consensual or not? And that's really hard, but that's why explaining the backstory of what happened and how he coerced me into all of this stuff and why these photos exist, it wasn't consensual, but I'm trying to prove that now 10 years later
Mm.
after thousands and thousands of photos are all over the internet. It's really hard to
Mhm.
do.
We're starting to have a lot of conversations in society around just sexual abuse in general and the different contexts that it can happen in. But this sort of rising conversation is, within that digital space. And
Mhm,
digital and online sexual abuse is really, and exploitation is really becoming the thing, but it's still this like underlying conversation. Like we're starting
mhm,
to know that it's there, but I don't think we really understand the depth and the
mhm,
amount of all of these horrific photos that are being shared in this like deep underbelly. And a lot of that is because many women have no idea that they are a victim of this kind of abuse. So, could you speak to people who could potentially being harassed in this digital space and their photos could be being shared and they have no idea? What should we look for? How can we know?
yeah, definitely. That's kind of my goal at this point. I've narrowed it down. Like, I mean, sharing my story is important, but
Mhm.
my goal is to bring awareness to the photo sharing. And I think one of the big issues with it not really having a lot of attention is I feel like there's just not a good name for it. We
Mm,
use revenge porn is probably the best known name, and even that
Mhm.
is a bit demeaning because
Yeah.
porn is typically considered consensual, typically.
right.
It just doesn't make any sense. So I think we need a better name, but I like digital sexual abuse. Legal term is dissemination of intimate or private images. There's a lot of different terms for it, but we need something that's gonna catch so we can talk about it. So
Right.
for right
Mhm.
now, I'm just, calling it digital essay. If we can, if anybody has a better name, let's vote on it and
Let us
Please
we'll
do.
know.
use it. I think it is so normal. We have Snapchat, kids are growing up sending photos. um, I went into this right out of high school having access to cell phones and stuff. This was early 2000s.
Right.
So now kids have all of this at such a young age. It's just second
Yeah.
nature to have your own identity on your phone and
Mhm.
sending intimate things. It just doesn't register. And so I don't want to scare women. I don't want to freak anybody out. But I think, unfortunately, because there's such an entitlement with men in our society now, that this is a bigger problem than many women know, and a lot of women
Mhm.
don't even know that their photos exist online. That scares me for them.
Mhm.
Another big, big portion of that is some of these photos that I see on websites my photos are women in clearly candid photos. It looks like they're hidden cameras, coming out of
Mm.
the shower, changing in the bathroom of their own home. Maybe it was taken through a door or something, a door crack, and they have no idea. I'm positive. And I wish I could go and find each woman and tell them, but this exists, and their, husbands, their partners, people they sleep with in bed every day is doing are can be capable of doing these things to them.
Mm.
And so just understanding that A, it's so common. It exists everywhere. It's not rare. And B, I think obviously framing it around just like any other assault, it's not your fault. You don't deserve this. It's
Right.
his fault. I say him just because typically
Mhm.
it's men. But I think some ways to look out for it. If I were a big sister talking to my little sister, telling her what to see in a relationship, red flags. First thing is any photo sharing, asking for nudes, that kind of stuff. Fine and well. I think the length of the relationship has a lot to do with that. So definitely understand whether you trust the person. And even then, even then, I think it's important to be really discerning about how you handle your own content and your own images. So if you want to send somebody, your partner a nude or have them take a photo of you, having something, especially in writing, is really helpful. So following it up with a text saying, this is private, this is not to be shared with anybody.
Mm,
That's something, and screenshot it. That's something you can take with you to police if you ever had to. And I know that's unfortunate because you want to trust your partner and everything, but this
Mhm.
is just to protect ourselves. So it would have helped me a lot if that, was ever the case. But having that kind of stated beforehand, we just can't fuck around anymore.
right.
It's 2024. AI is starting to infiltrate things,
Gosh.
taking
Deep
our faces
fakes.
from our social media. Yeah, and that happened
Yeah.
to me too. I had quite a few deep fakes of myself, in horrifying conditions, and so it's we're never really safe, but we can do as much as we can to protect real intimate images that we have. Another thing is, also maybe even if this is a relationship or whatever the relationship is, making sure the person understands this is a prosecutable crime. Like, do not do not share this. If it ends
Mhm.
up somewhere, I will know, or I will know it's not me. So there's only one way it can get out of this
It's
line of
you.
communication, and it's not me. Yeah. And for anybody who maybe has some inklings that, hey, I have photos that exist and we've been in this relationship for how long? And, I don't know, he's into porn. I don't know. What I would suggest, and this is a big thing that I did, was if you know of your images, if you have access to any of them, take them and reverse Google image search them. It's free, it's really, really easy.
Is it
And
safe?
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, it
I'm only
depends on,
wondering because I guess like Google would still have the data, but in theory, it's not
right.
going anywhere. I feel like that could be a really
Yeah, that's no, I appreciate you saying that because another portion of, this whole problem is there's an element of hacking. And that's a
right.
whole other thing. And so, women can have their emails hacked and their, iCloud
Yeah.
hacked and their photos taken from people who don't even know them, and
Right.
that's again, and then they can be used. So it exists. And so yeah, be careful, maybe do it incognito on your browser. But yes, as far as my experience, it's been safe. It doesn't go anywhere. Google is
Okay.
just gathering this information. So
Right.
I'd say it's safer to do that than not do anything. That's my opinion. Obviously, there's probably more qualified people who could express on that, but I'm not a lawyer or any of
Right.
that. But yeah, I think just if you are curious, going there, searching that, you'll
Mm.
find out whether or not it exists anywhere else. And unfortunately, when I did that, I mean, I was combing through hundreds of websites trying to find,
Oh my
what,
gosh.
and it became too much of a tangled mess. So again, I don't want to scare anybody, but this is just the reality
Yeah,
of it.
it exists, and we can't
Mhm.
pretend like it doesn't.
I mean, in a perfect world, and if I'm looking at my long-term goals in speaking out, that's what I want to do is find a way
Mm.
for a seamless way for women to be able to protect their images, easily find out if they're being used without their consent, because it does
Mhm.
happen so often, and we just don't have, let alone any awareness around it, but then again, tools. And then on top of that, any laws that help
Mm.
us when it does happen.
Okay, I was thinking just, like, about media and, like, how just, like, throughout, like, TV shows, we have seen like, I don't know, like, the first thing that, like, popped into my head was, like, How I Met Your Mother, and have you watched okay, have you
I
watched it? No.
haven't.
I haven't either.
No.
Guys, okay, well, it
I know people who love that show.
I do. I have a couple TV shows I'm about to talk about because it's about
Fair.
evolvement here. I swear there's, like, a point to
Yeah,
this. Bear with
I
me.
I feel you. You're good.
How I Met My Mother, like, it's always been one of my favorite, like, comedy TV shows. It's hilarious. but it was like created like kind of earlier 2000s. And there's this one character, and he's kind of supposed to be like a womanizer. He's played by Neil Patrick Harris, who is, by
Yes.
the way, like a gay man in real life. And he's
Yes.
wonderful, right? But he plays a womanizer who they like make jokes about the fact that like he has hidden cameras in his bedroom. And so like when he brings like women back, like he like gets these like videos and stuff like that. And it's a complete like joke throughout this show, but it's
Yeah.
almost kind of normalized in a way. Like when you're
Yes.
watching it, you don't think, "Oh, wait, that's bad."
Right.
Because like
That's
everyone kind of just like
it.
laughs about it. You're watching the show and you don't really even think about it because like it's a really good show and it's hilarious. Also, like, oh, should we be joking about this? Like that's an actually like really
Right.
big problem that like ruins people's
Right.
lives. And it's kind of just like made as a joke throughout this entire TV show.
Recently, I was just watching, Sex and the City was just added to Netflix,
Oh yeah,
and
I watched it
I
too when it was.
oh my gosh, and, I started that show when I was, like, a teenager. I've grown up with
Mhm.
that show. Obviously, it's problematic. We can see it now. It has not aged
Yeah.
well. There's still
It's
some
not.
nostalgia with it, clearly,
Yeah.
and the one of the first episodes, as I was watching it, I was like, "Oh my god," and I mean, yeah, remember, this is, like, 2001, right?
Mhm.
But one of the first episodes, Carrie meets a photographer who is a womanizer. But yeah, this photographer, he tells Carrie that he has all of these secret videotapes of all the models he brings home and does things with.
God.
And she's like, "Oh, wow," and it's just like this cheeky little interaction and
She's like,
talking
haha,
about the
LOL.
models, just ha ha. And it's just again, it's so normal to just ha ha. And again, it's because it's not a well known enough issue. And
Mhm.
those types of things, we've been groomed in these TV shows, media, all of that to just accept it. I mean, it's just part of the way it is. And why? Because it hasn't been challenged.
It's a man's world.
Hmm.
If you could go back and like if you could go back to you, let's say you're a
Hmm.
time traveler, okay? And you're like, I'm gonna get in my old time travel machine. I'm gonna go back to the me right when she discovered like all the photos, everything was happening, kind of just like the thick of that terrible feeling, right? Of like realizing that your nudes were just everywhere. What would you say to her if you could say something?
That's a big theme of what
Hmm.
I've been working on. I
Yeah.
want to speak out about this, but a lot of why I'm doing it is to heal her.
Hmm.
We talk about inner child work a lot, our inner
Yes.
teen, but there's an inner 25-year-old me that was so broken, and
Yeah.
I'm a 180 of a person now. And I think if I went back and were to be able to say anything to her, all I can imagine is just giving her all the love, just so much love, and
Hmm.
reinforcing it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not to blame in any of this. There's not even one iota. I mean, we can all say there's, here and there, but that once the behavior comes so predatory and so egregious, the victim, there is just no argument there. And so that's the hardest thing in my head, to take the blame away from myself. And when I can start looking at it as it is and realize, you know, he did this, he has issues, he's sick, and
Hmm.
he's doesn't have, unfortunately, he's going to live the rest of his life like that probably, but I'm not going to. And
Yeah.
as much as I would love to see him get real, actual legal action against him, it was close. It was close. He almost got charged by the DA for something unrelated. It was actually it was horrible. It was abuse toward our child, and he was protected by my family actually and got off from
Mhm.
that. So he was
Oh.
not sentenced to anything, not charged. But as far as my end of things with police go, I wish I had known how much of a struggle it would be. If I'm talking to myself or to other women, I would say having support is 1,000% your first step. That was my first step to leaving him, was gathering my
Hmm.
support, my trusted friends. That's the only way I mean, it's going to hold you accountable because they're not going to want to see you continuing anything. So you're going to have to take action. But when you're ready,
Right.
that's the biggest step. And so that taking action against it, that's a hard step, especially when you're doing it alone. I tried contacting lawyers before I went to police. Obviously, I didn't want to go to police. I
Right.
don't think that's has to be explained, but I had people confused why I hadn't.
Yeah.
And obviously, if people don't understand, I was actually assaulted as a teenager by a police officer. And so, in my mind, going to the police, I pictured them having all of my photos, sitting around a computer with donuts, laughing. That's
Yeah.
Right.
what this does to people. That's what this does. And so, I would say, take if you're going to take action, you know, if you can get a lawyer, first and foremost. If you can't afford to get a lawyer, which was where I was at, I was strung along by a lot of lawyers. They didn't really know what to do. Finally, I contacted an attorney out of New York. They're doing really, really progressive revenge porn laws. They actually were part of creating this loophole in the statute of limitations in New York for a period of time where victims could come forward many, many years past the statute and be able to convict their abusers. So that's huge. And
Amazing.
unfortunately, that's a $5,000 retainer. So I couldn't take it. They were willing to take my case, but I couldn't do it. So I
Mhm.
ended up going to the police. And I would say, that experience was hard on its own. But having support would have been really helpful for me to have gone in there with a friend who had offered to go with me. And I declined thinking I can just do it on my own.
Mhm.
No.
Mhm.
I would also tell her to just document everything, and this is what I would tell other women, just make sure you have a timeline, dates. They're going to ask you everything, so the better
Yeah.
prepared you are, the more chances you'll have at being successful. You really have to be your own squeaky wheel, unfortunately. If I could go back and tell her anything beyond all of that stuff, beyond the horrible stuff, I would just tell her to, wait it out, fight through it. It's going to be hard, but we're going to be on this side and I have us now. And,
Yeah.
I'm looking at in the next couple of years when my child is out on their own, they're a teenager, so it's getting close. I'm looking at, living abroad and freelancing over in Europe and living my
Nice.
dreams. And so I would tell her, we're going to be there. So hang in there.
Yeah.
You're going to do it. Yeah, there's a lot I would tell her.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like I am trying to do that in a way consciously by telling other women and talking about it.
It's kind of simple in a way, right? It's like this idea of no, like I promise you everything is actually going to be okay.
Yeah.
But when you're living in it, it is so hard to be able to grasp onto the idea of that. And it's like when we have survivors, email us and reach out to us, like all I want is to just like convince them you are going to be okay. Just like stick through it. Like the only way
Yeah.
through is through. But
Right.
like that's not advice, you know what I mean? Like, everyone's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I don't wanna hear, 'Oh, everything's gonna be okay.'" Right? Like, no one wants to hear that as advice, but it's
Right.
like, if you
Sometimes
can
that's
say
what you
it
need to
in the
hear.
yeah, like,
Mhm.
if you can say it in the right way,
Yeah.
sometimes that's, like,
Yeah.
actually what you need to hear, and I think that it helps that, like, me and Shannon went through the thick of it, and, like,
Mhm.
we had our, like, severe battles with, like, mental health and stuff, and still do, obviously, but, like, we're good now in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And so to, like,
Right.
be able to tell other survivors, like, "Hey, like, I've been where you have been, and it
Right.
was awful." Like, I literally did not know how to get out of bed in the morning. Like, I all just cried all day long, every day. But, like, now I'm here. I think that, like, helps.
Mhm.
That piece of advice, as simple as it is, like, that you would tell yourself, like, "Hey, like, we did it. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to go achieve what we wanted to achieve." And I think that's really,
Exactly.
really beautiful, and that makes me
And
really happy to
that's
hear.
thank you. Me too. Me too. And
Mhm.
and that's another thing I would love to, emphasize to anybody who's feeling like I can't do it. It's too much being a single
Mhm.
mom, kids involved, multiple kids. I can't imagine women with multiple kids having
Yeah,
to
Right.
face leaving. And so sometimes that's a big factor of why we stay in it and accept the abuse and accept the crap that he did to me. But, all I can say is, so many single moms have come before us and have done it, have succeeded, they've done it, and they're
yeah.
happier, their kids are happier. Your kids will thank you for getting out of that eventually one day. And, I think the main thing is just to tell yourself, like, imagine yourself 5 years from now. Just
Right.
imagine your perfect life. I mean, I'm all about manifestation, whatever,
Mhm.
but it's not even that. It's just imagine what that can look like. You're going to be
Yeah.
on your own couch, watching a movie with your kids in your own home, cleaning your own messes, and
Mm.
you won't deal with any. I mean, obviously, let's be realistic. You're going to deal with stuff, but it's it's possible. It's not
Right.
impossible at all, and it's such a better life than dealing with that and trying to make it work because
Mhm.
they don't want to make it work. They want to
Mm,
hurt us. And these types of men, these types of husbands and boyfriends and relationships, they don't want to make it work. They don't want anything from us except, unfortunately, our bodies and what we can give them sexually in a lot of these sort of dynamics, these
Right, yeah.
relationships. I don't want to generalize because I know it's not every relationship, and straight men are not all terrible. I'm not trying to say that. I had my kid came to me a couple weeks ago and said, "You hate men." And I was like, "No, I don't hate men. I hate what society has made men." It's That's the
That's a
problem. I
good one.
think men are divine creatures. I think masculine energy is really important and needed, but it's just the men that have been built into this world that it excuses them, entitles them.
Mhm.
right.
It makes sense that this is how it works, but we're
Right,
flipping that.
right. You're right, like, society has taught men certain things that makes them act certain ways now, and we need to start breaking that down piece by
Mhm.
piece by piece.
We can't change men, we can't change the situation, and I'm not saying don't date men, don't do anything with men, but, it's also you have to just be cautious, unfortunately, because even if you know someone and you think you can trust them, unfortunately, you don't always do. You don't
Right.
always know someone fully, and
Mhm.
people who found out about what was going on in our marriage were shocked because my ex
Yeah.
was such a nice person, and they would
They
just have
always
no
are.
idea.
They always are, yeah,
Mhm.
they're always
Yeah.
so nice
Uh-huh.
to everyone
So
else.
nice. Oh, yeah, just a great guy. It's already built against us to not be believed. It's already, like, hard enough, but if we do the work internally and we're coming from a place of confidence that, "No, this was not okay. I did not want this," that's gonna work from there, and I think we're just gonna build momentum.
Which that's like a
Takes time.
constant reminder too. We are many years out from our own case, and it's still
Mhm.
like a weekly reminder of like, I didn't want that. The way that I felt afterwards identifies the
Mhm.
fact that I didn't consent to that. Like, it's a constant reminder, especially
Yeah.
when you've experienced years and years of abuse. And that conversation might not ever go away in your head. It just might be able to be easier
Mhm.
to convince yourself and remind yourself of how not okay that was. Our last question here, we had talked about this in our initial conversation, but I would just love for you to talk about the moment that you were finally able to walk away when you set those boundaries and you didn't look back and you
Mhm.
left that whole marriage. How did you finally find the ability to walk away? What did it for you? What really enabled you to make that decision to leave?
Yeah. There was a lot actually, and, again, it wasn't just a boom, I'm left and then it's good. It was
Right.
a long process, and I will always say, be careful when you're leaving because that's when things can really amp up if there's violence involved, and it did for me. But the catalyst was he had blow up a rage-induced fit, one morning, and, I had our child, we were trying to get in the car so I could go to work, and he tried to hide my keys. He was, getting violent. Finally got out to the car and he followed me. And that was really scary. I ended up calling his dad instead of the police, thinking that his dad could talk him down.
Mm,
And, I don't want to get into any details of his family because I respect them and I respect their privacy. And they were so supportive of me, even his dad
mhm.
later
Wow.
on.
Wow,
But at the
yeah.
time, his dad was actually like, "Why," kind of almost blaming me. Like, "I know there's things going on in your marriage
Mhm.
and there's two sides to it." And so nothing felt protected. My whole system wouldn't acknowledge the abuse that was
Right.
clearly going on. It was just stuff it down. So I had to escape that whole system. And to an extent, I'm not saying the families or anything like that were like him and problematic, but going out of a system that ignores the problems and the abuse and not even consciously enables it, but it is a factor. And when you're
Mhm.
not in that anymore, you kind of can see, oh, that wasn't okay, and just, be able to work on that. But that was also coming off the tails of I had recently been very, very, very suicidal. I spent probably about a year n- not sure if I would die that day. I
Right.
had
Mhm.
plans for how I would do it. And that last rage fit was kind of a moment where I was like, I can't leave my son with this man. I can't do it. I
Mhm.
can't leave. I have to leave the marriage. I can't leave the world. But
Mhm.
another factor was also that somebody from our town, kind of a well-known person from our family and friends, had found me online and reached out to me on social media and said, "Hey, I'm interested. Do you want to meet up and do this stuff?"
My God.
That was horrible.
Yeah.
That was horrible to know that they knew. I don't know how they found it, but it's all over the internet.
It's
That's
all
how they found
connected.
it. That's
Yeah.
how they found it. And so it's that kind of like it hits so close to home. Like I was not anonymous. This was not, he always, whenever he would post my stuff, he would say it was like a drop in the bucket on the internet, that it was just so small and so unimpactful. But every photo that I see on the internet now is just, it's a piece of me gone, that I'm trying to
Mhm.
reel back. So those were the big factors in me getting out. It was really hard. It was really hard to leave. I kind of just had this crazy switch where I was like, fuck this. I'm done with this. I'm going back to school. I went to school for design that I had always been putting off. He had always discouraged me to go. Now I'm working in my field and trying to plan
Mhm.
more in my
Yes.
career and everything in that field and taking back those pieces he took from me. So uh the final steps to leaving, there was a lot, but it was just culminating in like, I can't do this anymore. There has to be an end to this. I can't sustain it. I'm gonna die or I'm gonna leave. And
Mm.
also being that I left right before COVID, that was a huge thing too, because we saw what domestic violence looked like during
Increased like
COVID when people were
crazy.
strapped together. I mean, the fact that I got
Yeah.
out then, there was some divine timing with that. I had some help probably from something around
Some
me.
angels. Yeah.
Leaving was the easiest but hardest decision to make. But I really think about now and understand how everything affected me. And I think that's the best way to reaffirm, like, obviously now it was like the best choice I could have ever made now. But
Mhm.
being in it, just understanding like everything, like you said, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to work out. But there's also so much anger still, so
Mm.
much to work through,
Yeah.
and so many ways that it's taken from me that I'm gonna have to fight to get back. So leaving is definitely not does not mean it's over. I don't want to scare women, but it doesn't mean it's over, but it's also just the beginning. And that can be really, really inspiring.
The beginning to a new phase
Mhm.
that's yours,
Yeah.
where you start
Yeah.
to have full agency over your life
Yeah.
and who you are and the decisions that you make. We're so proud
Yeah.
of you. And
Thank
I don't
you.
usually, I'm not a big crier, and I don't know if this is because I'm about to start my period or what, but I'm like feeling so just, uh, I'm feeling emotional.
You're
That's
gonna
what's
make
going
me
on here.
cry.
Or
No,
I'm just like,
it's
I I can't imagine like experiencing years and years of this and being able to like take your life back and to be
Mhm.
like you didn't ask to be broken.
Yeah.
You didn't
Yeah.
ask for someone to destroy you and do all these horrible things, and yet you're piecing yourself back together. Like you're taking on that responsibility to heal what somebody else broke, and
Right.
you want to help other people, and I just
And
think that you're so incredible. So thank you for
thank you so
sharing,
much.
for
Thank you
speaking
so
with us
much.
today.
Yeah, no, and that's something I really wanna, harness in, is that at a certain point, you can destroy yourself, and, I almost did.
Mhm.
I had a really tower moment last year when I hit rock bottom with my alcoholism, and I almost lost everything. I almost destroyed my life. I can't blame my alcoholism on anybody but me, but it did manifest. Obviously, my dad's an alcoholic, so that's a big part of it, but it did
Mm.
manifest through coping with the sexual abuse and the violence and all of that. And so in a way, now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, he was making me destroy myself, in a
Right.
lot of ways. I was destroying myself by proxy of what he's done. And so I'm not going to give him that satisfaction. And
Mhm.
so I think being able to now be in recovery and look back and be like, if I can be a good mom and be happy and then also help other women understand, that's the best revenge. That's the best thing I can do. And like revenge porn and a lot of these photo sharing platforms, a lot of it is titled like expose your wife or
Right.
exposing photos. That's their like lingo for it. And in that way, I want to do the exact thing back, just expose them I'm not
Yeah.
posting naked pictures of him. Nobody needs to see that, but I can expose your actions, and
Right.
that's going to be the
Mhm.
best way to feel vindicated, I guess. So thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's a really healthy path to be taking. So
Mhm.
we have one more TV show recommendation that I was
Yeah,
thinking of
I'm
actually.
all for it. Yes.
I've already asked Shannon this, but have you seen Big Little Lies? It's also a book.
I have been wanting to watch that so
Yeah,
bad, so
so because
bad.
yeah, it's like with Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
So amazing. I mean, it's definitely one of, I would say it's a beautiful show. It's definitely a harder one to watch because it is really about domestic abuse in a marriage. They do such a good job and there's obviously you see all like the frustrations of like people, blaming the wife and like things like that. And we see a lot of like the common kind of things we just see throughout society. But it's just a beautiful show and they do a really good job at painting a picture of what domestic violence really looks like in marriages a lot of the time and like how hard it is for women to leave, especially when they have kids. That's another one that I would recommend, but I would give a
Yeah,
little bit more of like a viewer discretion just because you do see like bad things happening and
right.
but
Trigger
it's an
warnings.
amazing
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. And that's the thing with that kind of stuff. I guess maybe I'm like a glutton for like punishment. Maybe I'm into exposure therapy. I don't know. But with that kind of stuff, I feel like a lot of me is numb to some of the pain.
Mm.
So some of this horrible stuff I can really soak in and be like, eh, it doesn't really get to me.
Like,
Maybe it does, but I don't it
I
fuels
know,
me, I
I'm with
think, you
you.
know? Well, I think anytime that you can see like relate to something like that
Hmm.
and see yourself in it, like that's huge. And so when you're
Mm.
talking about a topic like that, I mean, and trying to unravel ourselves from this illusion that we've created that we have to have this life, even though it's
Right.
not realistic, it's not going
Right.
to happen because unfortunately we're not in it with partners that really want what we want. In a lot of situations, yeah, I definitely would check that out.
Did you watch Baby Reindeer?
Oh my God.
It was like,
Baby
I finally found
reindeer.
someone who's seen it. Thank God.
Thank
It
God. Same here. Nobody else has watched it. I'm only talking to people on TikTok, and that's just me watching TikToks
Yep.
about it. But baby reindeer. Holy
Wow.
crap. The sexual assault in that show, the
That was a lot.
way he described going back to his abuser was a big thing I faced. And not only
Mm.
within my marriage, but with previous assaulters too in my life that I had
Mhm.
gone back, and it's like we need to be talking about this. This is what
Yes.
the survivor mindset is so complex and so complicated, and it's not represented again in, the
Right.
court of law. It's going to say, well, you went back to this person. You went back to do this. Why? What are the motives behind
Right.
that? What's the root?
Like
Yeah.
they should be
Hmm.
Yeah.
watching Baby Ranger. It's so good. And it's so
Right.
like
Right.
I've always wanted to be able to like, okay, I'm a horrible artist, but I like to write things, but I can't write the way that this person, created Baby Reindeer. And it just displays things in such an artistic, like beautifully well done, but horrible way, like all in
Hmm.
one piece. Oh my gosh,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like obsessed. Like I'm actually a little like I think I have a little bit of a problem. I'm kind of obsessed with like thinking about it.
Real life is stranger than fiction. It is so, and this
Mhm.
is all a true story,
Hmm.
Right,
allegedly.
right.
But it's everywhere, and if
Hmm.
there's so much shame around talking about all of this stuff, and so when we're having these open conversations, why is everybody talking about baby reindeer? Because of this stuff, that's being brought to light because he was really brave. So people want more of that. So,
Right.
we should
That's a good thing.
lean into that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, thank you, Em, so much for being here. It was so incredible to talk to you and to hear your story and for you to share all of your wisdom today. And thank you to everyone who listened. We love you all so much. We hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you on the flip side and cheers.
Cheers.